We're here today with Martin Deschambault. He's one of the principal artists for Assassin's Creed, and he's also the artist behind the first ArtStation book, Project 77. Today he's going to show us how he does one of his amazing illustrations with our Wacom Cintiq, and he's going to take us through his process.
Yeah. Amazing. We'll see. For now, I know that I want to have a subject, like a spaceship or human riding a space, a speeder or something. But I'm not sure about the design right now. But I'm just placing the subject on the canvas. So I will probably work on it a little bit later. But for now, it's maybe something floating, and we're trying to find a way to make the reading of the artwork from one side to the other and traveling through the artwork. This is why the way I'm placing the towers. So this way I will have the main subject in the foreground on this side. I will go to the main towers, maybe the second one. And right now I'm thinking of maybe having a landscape in the background to give it a bit more depth in the scene. So right now I'm trying to separate this layer to the other one. So this is why maybe if this is water or sand or and here, because I've separated this part from this part, I create a little bit more depth. So usually you can play with value, but right now it's basically black and white. I cheated with this one, but if I make it all black and white, now I'm playing with the very hard contrast, so if I put my subject here I will not see it, but later if I had some fogs and lighting, and maybe it's gonna be the right place to put it, but just because now it's very high contrast black and white, so I prefer to put my subject right here. But just by moving it I have the feeling that maybe it's more interesting this way. But I have to switch my canvas all the time. This way I keep a fresh eye. I feel that the tower here was a little bit too close to the side, and I feel that maybe if I stretch the canvas, but I don't know, maybe I can stretch it on the other side too. It's going to be more interesting, we'll see. doing the classic Project 77 structure, the, the huge tower blade.
Okay, so tell us about how this first image launched Project 77.
Why? For the first one, I wanted to have a artwork, and it's basically like a benchmark where I have everything that I want for the project. So it was landscape with crazy architecture, with some creature, and maybe a little bit of high tech. I didn't have spaceship in this one, but I wanted to integrate as much as possible all the variety I wanted for Project 77 to sell the fact that I wanted to do a space opera. So and the other one that I did, it was inside the big cities. So I wanted to show the contrast between maybe some landscape with tribes, sci-fi tribes walking around towards the tower, and the other one, it's crowded cities with mechs and weird stuff. So the two first artwork was this one, and the other one is. So this is the second one I did. So I really wanted, and even in the color palette, I wanted to show the contrast between landscape and the desert, and very wide open with tribes and creatures and weird structure. But even the structure are very similar if you look at the shape of the blade structure. And this is why I did today. So it's basically the same kind of structure, but I wanted to have the same shape language for the main cities, but at the same time it's very crowded with some creature, but spaceship and mechs on the background, and this kind of bounty hunter. So these are the two first artwork I did in 2011, and after that if we look at this one, I started to extend a little bit more about this structure, what it can look like on different contexts. But
So tell us again, explain, you were saying there was something really interesting about the first image that you created and the last image.
For the last image of the book, I wanted to like redo the same scene with the tribes, with sci-fi camel, with this kind of structure. And I wanted to make the scene where it's like maybe 500 years later, where it's more like a ruins of this same structure. So I gave some history in the during the books, and from the first one to the last one.
Now that the book is out, what's your dream for Project 77 to become?
I want to continue to work on it and to design a bit more each part of the world. A video game for sure, because I'm working on video game industry, so I always have some ideas about game mechanic and game structure and stuff like this, because I'm doing video game for work. But short movie can be also pretty cool. Right now I want to define a little bit more the subject, and because of the scale, maybe it was because here, if I put the speeder bike here, it's going to be confusing with the shape at the bottom. So maybe if it's a spaceship flying towards the tower, is going to be more interesting. So this is why I decided to move it, and at the same time it's going to be in the right position in the composition to have in this area. So not quite sure about the shape, but I found something that can maybe be interesting. So right now I'm working more with the rhythm of the shape, to contrast with some negative and positive shape, but also some very large scale part of the structure with some a little bit more detail area. So this way it helped to create a focus point, and because if I put detail everywhere, it's going to be like a mess where we don't understand exactly the scale of it. But and because I'm using some random technique with shapes and very loose sketching technique, I can start to see some interesting patterns. So I will play with that to, for example, the line here.
What was one of the biggest mistakes you saw some of the less experienced artists
I would say
doing?
it's composition, because usually the artists they really want to focus on the rendering, so they put a lot of details rendering some part because they lose the focus of the entire artwork, the entire composition, and this is a mistake, because if the composition is not interesting and not right, you lose too much time doing this, because if you need to change the composition, maybe you will have to erase the part then you put a lot of effort on it, and because of that you are attached to it and you don't want to remove it, so it's like it's a fighting. So this is why I prefer to see more like rough composition, and for me the composition is the key, because this is the way you sell your design. So if it's pleasing and interesting to read, and you understand the scale, the depth, and you want to travel in this in the artwork, it's gonna be easier to sell your ideas. So and one of the biggest mistakes then people usually do, it's they have the tendency to split the artwork in two. So for here I'm very close to do this mistake, because the line of the tower is very close to the middle, but because I have another one in the background, then readjust this composition, and I have some line to break it, and I compensate with the other shape. Then it's a way to play with that, but usually if you split your image in two, it's one of the biggest mistakes that people do when they do the composition. So this way I'm using something very random again. I just want to start to create I would say the same technique I use for the sketches. So it's gonna be very random, just to find some ideas with the line, and I will do the same thing with color. So maybe right now I see some yellow that I took from the picture, and I say, oh, maybe it can be interesting to play with that. So I erase everything and I just keep some dots from the picture. That is one thing that if I do a sketch in black and white, I will not go too much into detail, because right now, because I'm start to paint with colors, I don't really take too much care about the sketches I did before, because maybe I can find something different, and I just don't want to redo the same drawing in color after that. So this is why I keep it loose, even if I paint over the drawing I did before, it's okay, because this can lead to another idea, then I will use. So. This is something I created. It's a mix of shapes, and for example, if I found an industrial structure and I think the detail can be interesting, I will copy and paste to have a symmetry, and I will create a lot of them, and after that I can put them on top of the other and create use some filter like overlay and stuff like this. So I will create again another randomness in the shape, so I can use that if I want to, for example, use this part. I integrate it in my drawing. This is something I created. It's a mix of shapes, and for example, if I found an industrial structure and I think the detail can be interesting, I will copy and paste to have a symmetry, and I will create a lot of them, and after that I can put them on top of the other and create use some filter like overlay and stuff like this. So I will create again another randomness in the shape, so I can use that if I want to, for example, use this part. I integrate it in my drawing. Another thing, because maybe I'm not sure about the overall mood, I can open some references. We'll open all of it. Okay. We'll create another one. And I will use the image adjust match color. I really like this because I can find some very interesting IP accident again. So this is pretty cool. So I will probably not use all of it, but because I want to contrast with the orange that was here, maybe it was a little bit too subtle a little bit. So I can keep this part. I think the contrast is way more interesting now than it was before. So again, I will play back and forth with the mood, with the shape, with the design by using different techniques like this, and I can keep doing this for as long as I decided that it's done. So maybe a couple of hours and the artwork will be finished.